Hello and welcome to my channel. Today, let's talk about standard costing. What is standard costing? This is a costing method, so it means it's used to give a value to the item that you use in your company. Instead of using the actual costs of the item, which is the most common way and most obvious way to do, in fact, you can use something else, which is the cost that you expect. If you use cost that you expect instead of the real cost of things, right, then this will be called a standard cost. However, if you use standard cost, it means obviously you don't use the real cost. And if it's not the real cost, then you will have to do some kind of analysis to know what is the gap between this standard cost that you use and the actual cost that happen so that you know what's really going on. This analysis of what's really going on is called variances. We will dig much further in this video. So, well, it looks so simple to use the actual costs, right? However, it's not. And so what is the point of using standard costing instead? Unless you just think it's making your life complicated, but otherwise there is a real meaning for that. It's easier actually to manage than other costing methods that are called usually FIFO and LIFO, and you can refer to another video I made on this topic if you want to know what is FIFO and LIFO. Standard cost is also a lot less time consuming because when you want to collect real costs, you have to track every cost happening in your company. If you use standard cost, you just assign a specific cost, say $1 for like the year of a product, and then you don't have to track everything. If you know that you have 100 products of this type of product in your stock, then it's just 100 times $1, and that's it. You get the idea. It's much easier to budget because you can actually use your standard cost for your budget. It's what you plan. So and you can use your budget cost for your standard cost. In fact, most of the time it's the same. It's also easier to allocate the overhead. Overhead is all the like administrative expenses that you have on a company, right? Like the general management and like the finance department and the purchasing department and all the kind of thing that is not like directly absorbed by a product. And these things, you don't want to allocate the real cost one by one every time that you pay a salary to someone or every time you spend, I don't know, ink for the photocopy machine. You want to put some rules so that you can allocate it easily one time per year. I mean, you decide the rule one time per year, let's say. And also the standard costing, in fact, it gives you opportunity to have more meaningful analysis. So I think that's about it. But any downside? Yes, there are downsides. Nothing's perfect, right? So the downside of standard costing is that okay, it's depend on your company, but you cannot use it for cost plus contracts. What is a cost plus contract, you may ask, and it's a good question. In some case, in fact, your clients they will want to buy your company products based on the actual cost that you occur to make the product plus a margin. Say for instance that you are like, I don't know, redoing your kitchen. You want the guy who will redo your kitchen to charge you the cost of the furniture that maybe you choose from another shop and some like labor hours of the people who will install the kitchen and some margin, of course, for the entrepreneur that do the kitchen. That's a cost plus contract. In that case, the guy cannot charge you a standard cost of the closet that you want to install, right? You want to pay what actually he paid to the closet manufacturer, and that's it. And it's also not so suitable for super fast changing environment, meaning like if your actual costs jump up and down a lot, well, if you have a standard that is set for the full years, you will have huge variances. It will become totally meaningless, and it will not help you also to do the pricing for your product or to like pass along your costs that are jumping up and down. Sorry for your to your clients. So that would be a very big issue. Um, okay, most environments are not fast changing. By fast changing, I mean like cost jumping every week or something like that. If it's jumping 2 times a year, it's totally okay. Um, Another downside of the standard cost is that it tends to be a bit complex on like the analysis, and so the feedback is might be slow. Usually you do the feedback every time you do a periodic closing, which is like monthly, and then you probably need a cost accountant first. If you don't have one, hire one, and then this cost accountant person will probably need maybe a week or a week and a half to do all the analysis that you need if you have a big operation. And most important, maybe I keep the most important for last actually, is if you analyze, you might still take the wrong decision based on your analysis, because you will want to have like positive variances. You will want to have upsides on your variances when you compare the standard and the actual. I'm sorry, it's a bit complicated, but that's the way it is. And even if you have like favorable variances, the business as a whole may not benefit from your decision. So you have to be careful what decisions you take. We will go on this a little bit further down, but you have to be careful on the decision you will take based on the variances analysis that you perform. How does it work? So, well, there are two steps. This part is not so complicated. First, you need to define a standard cost. If your cost is quite stable, you can just pick like last year average cost and say, okay, this is my new standard. Boom, that's it. If you know that there are some changes going on compared to last year, like your supplier increase their price, or like your employee have a salary increase every year of 2% or like that, you can actually reflect that. So in that case, you will use your commonly expected cost or budget cost. I take a small example. If usually you buy to your supplier by pallet and you have a price for a pallet, every time you order one pallet, you pay one price. Okay. If one time you get a big order from your customer and you order like 5 pallets at once, well, probably you will have a better price. This should not be your reference for your standard cost. The reason is that most of time, like 99% of the time, right, you buy one pallet by one pallet with a fixed price. If you have like unexpected events occurring, sometimes it doesn't matter. It will just go to the variance. After, you need to take some hypotheses, but basically, if you do your budget, then you can take those hypotheses and you can use the standard cost directly from your budget. And you need to allocate the overheads with some rules, so that your standard cost will reflect what you want it to say. Um, if you want to know more about the variances in detail, you can check another video on the variances that will explain you in much more detail. After, the second part is you need just to know how to maintain your standard cost. So you need to decide what is the frequency or the condition to update the standard cost. I would recommend, based on my experience, I would recommend you update once a year. However, if your company has specific events, you could decide to update when a specific event occurs. That's a possibility too. So basically, how does it work? You define the standard cost and you define how often you change the standard cost, and that's it. It should not change too often, otherwise it will be a mess. What about the variances? Yes, I mentioned this word several times. So the variances, in fact, it's when reality happened to you, because nothing ever go as planned, right? I mean, no matter how good your plan is and no matter how much resources you use to do a big beautiful budget, in fact your actual cost will never 100% be the same as your target, right? So you basically have two types of variances. You have like something that we call the rate variance, and don't worry, I will give an example very soon. And you have the volume variances. So rate variances, also called price variance, and volume variance. And just a little reminder, I mean, you can have a lot of variances on many topics, but it's not necessary that all variances are worth spending a lot of time to analyze. You need to find what is relevant to your business. So basically, to find the relevance of analyzing some variance, you need to check, okay, will it be helpful for me to improve my operations? And will it be helpful for me to have a lower cost for running my business or a higher profitability, which is basically the same, right? So that's really about variances. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's not a scientific experiment, right? You don't need to cover every and all possibilities. Just take care of what matters the most for your business. So an example, because right now it's a bit theoretical. So let's dig into some numbers that will be much easier afterwards. So let's assume that you have a company called Company A, and last year you buy plastic bottles because your company is, I don't know, like bottling spring water, let's say, and so you buy some plastic bottles at $95.24 per 100 bottle. Sorry, it's very specific, but I just made it, you will see, so that it's easier afterwards. So for this year, your supplier tell you, okay, look, I will increase 5% my prices to you because I don't know, like plastic material increase or the oil increase or something. So now we say, okay, from this year onwards, I will charge you $100 per 100 bottle. So you think, okay, right? So then it's like $1 per bottle. So let's set the standard cost as $1 per bottle. Every time I buy an empty plastic bottle, $1. And then you plan some volume based on your activity. You think, okay, basically I will buy like 15,000 empty plastic bottles per month to my supplier because I will sell those 50,000 bottles to my clients, retailer, or such. However, your purchase department, which as we will see is a great purchase department, they will go to have a last negotiation round and maybe on like the end of December, the very end of December, and they get a super good price if you buy one pallet of 10,000 bottles at once. Then the price will be $96 per 100 bottle instead of 100. So good discount, right? It's almost offset the initial increase. It's, I don't know, like 4% maybe. Anyway, um, so what you want to know is, okay, you plan to buy 15,000 bottles at $1, which is like $15,000, right? But in reality, you have more business than expected, or you do more bottling than expected anyway, and you bottle like 20,000 bottles. So you need to buy, you bought 20,000 bottles. So considering that it's like two full pallets, right? I apply my $96 per 100 pallet, which I can show with the math would be better. And so you pay like 20,000 bottles, right? At 0.96 per bottle. So it's a total of $19,200. However, you plan to buy only 15,000 bottles at $1, which is like $50,000. So turn out that you spend $19,200 instead of $15,000. So now what? Good question. How to analyze this? Well, that's exactly what we will do. So as you remember, first you have, yes, it's empty, but don't worry. At first you have what you plan in terms of quantity and the standard cost that you set. And the reality happen, and then you have like actual quantity that you purchase and the actual cost. And you want to go from one to the other, right? So in fact, will have to do two steps. One step is you will just have one of the parameter change. So first you will say, okay, I plan to buy some quantity, but in reality, I buy more or less than I plan. And you keep the standard cost. This part, right, difference between, I mean, from this to this, it will be what we call the volume variance. Is the fact that you purchase more or less quantity. Then the second part, well, you keep the actual quantity in both, as you can see here, but instead of standard cost, you will put what you already paid to your supplier. This is what we call the price variance. It's just the fact that you compare the same quantity, the real quantity, with the price difference between planned price and actual. So let's put some numbers, otherwise it's still a little bit theoretical, right? So you plan 15,000 bottles purchase, and you plan $1 per bottle, right? So it's $15,000. Why I put -1 and minus 15,000? Because it's cost. You will see it's easier if you put sign. So cost is minus sign, and then any kind of revenue is plus. Therefore, when you will have some like overspend, it will be minus sign, and when you will have some saving, it will be plus, and it will be super easy to understand. So in reality, as I say, you buy 20,000 empty plastic bottle, right? And you buy them in standard cost first, because you just want to know the impact of buying more volume. So you purchase them at $1 as well, right? So it's $20,000. Sorry, 20,000 bottle at $1, which is $20,000. And the volume variance will be what is your actual quantity at standard cost minus what was your planned quantity at standard cost. It's always like where you end up to compared to where you came from, right? So minus where you came from. So it's minus $20,000 that you spend here as calculated, minus the minus 15, which is like minus 5,000, meaning you spend more, you spend $5,000 more due to the fact that you buy more volume. Okay, it makes sort of sense, right? I mean, if you buy more, you pay more. That's quite logical. And then we do the same for the price variance. So price variance, as we say, okay, the actual quantity is 20,000. You compare 20,000 with 20,000. It's the actual quantity that you really bought. And now you want to know what happened between the cost you already paid and the cost you planned. So the cost you already pay is 0.96 because you have this great last minute discount, right? So 20,000 bottles multiplied by $0.96, it's 19,200. It's what you already paid to your supplier, so that makes sense. So it's the same. You calculate, okay, where you end up, which is the actual, minus what you calculated here as actual quantity at standard cost, and you do the difference. So 19,200 minus 20 minus 20, right? So plus basically. So your price variance is plus 800. So yes, we spend more 19,200 than we planned, 15,000, but it's mostly because we buy more quantity than we plan, right? So you buy more, you pay more. It makes sense. And even though you buy more, in fact you pay a little bit less than you should have paid according to your plan because purchaser, they did a good job, they negotiated some extra discount. So the analysis here is that actually the reality looks quite good. I mean, you do some savings. Plus, if you buy more quantities, it's because you have more business, right? So actually, it's really a good thing for your company to spend more, and you spend less, still less than you should have. So is it all? Yes, I will not go to the detail of all the different possible variances because I have a video on that, or if not yet, it will. And the only thing you need to remember is, okay, that yes, there are several components on which you can analyze variances. Basically, all your P&L can have variance analysis. So I list a few just to give some example. The purchase is what we just discussed, but you can have on labor, direct labor, indirect labor. You can have on like material consumption in production. You can have overhead. And in reality, you have a little bit more than just price variance and volume variance. You can have like some sub-components on those variances, like productivity, like mix variances. And this, I will detail it in the next video. Search on my channel if it's there already or not, depending when you watch this one. And you should really beware of the wrong conclusions or the unwanted consequences. So for this, I take a small example. Here you see in the example I just did, we say, okay, we buy more. So it's a good thing because if we buy by pallet of 10,000, we have a better price. The wrong conclusion will be, okay, I always want to have a positive price variance. I always want to save compared to my standard. So I buy huge quantities, I fill my warehouse, and then I don't have orders to sell them, and I don't know, need to rent some external storage and pay more just because I order more. So what you save on one hand by buying more empty bottle, right? You will lose it on the other hand when you have to pay a lot of warehouse fees. That would be a wrong conclusion. Okay, you don't have to focus only on one component of variance. I wrap up quickly before I'm too long. Okay, so the standard cost is useful because it can give you a lot more insightful information on your business. If you just do everything in like actual cost or FIFO or like that, you will have a lot of ups and downs and you will not know exactly what happened. You know, oh, I spend more, oh, I spend less, oh, I spend more, oh, I spend less. Oh, yes, but why? Hard to say. And it's a very good method. It's a very good costing principle. Only if you, well, manage it properly. For example, the wrong thing to do is you set standard cost and 5 years later you haven't updated it, then it doesn't reflect the reality at all anymore, and you have like huge variances, and you still then you lose all the insightful informations. You need to analyze it with care because you don't want to take the wrong conclusions. So you probably need to hire a cost accountant if you don't have one already. And then you can take wrong decisions if you are too focused on the making all the variances favorable. Then maybe the business will suffer instead of boom. And at last, it's just a small note. If you watch my FIFO LIFO video already, the standard cost can be used even though you use the valuation of your inventory with another method. So really watch my video on inventory valuation because it will clarify what I mean in here. But standard cost, you might use it partially, like for budgeting purpose only or like that. It's not an issue. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please click like, right? And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be informed of the next video and click the little bell. It will tell you whenever I post something new. Thanks a lot. Take care.